You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Well, I'm very grateful to be here.
Why?
Because it's almost Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We lived another year.
And so for people who are listening to our disembodied voices or watching us on YouTube, it is in real time for us Thanksgiving. And so
I thought my voice was dulcet and mellifluous.
But on the podcast, it's disembodied.
Disembodied, okay.
Yeah.
I guess it can be all three.
It can be all three.
There you
go.
go.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
But we decided that we wanted to put something out for Thanksgiving because we were thinking about it and realized that we hadn't done a Thanksgiving special. So we're going to actually have a week where we put out 2 podcasts. So this podcast will drop on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and then we'll have our regular podcast on Friday. But we wanted to talk about the idea of being gracious and what gratitude does for human beings, because I, as a recovering person, have always lived with this idea that you have to learn how to be able to be gracious, that you have to have an attitude of gratitude that is a foundational precept of a recovering lifestyle.
And then step 4, or that's make amends, but isn't that part of being expressing gratitude?
Well, the idea is that so step 4 is that you make a fearless and searching moral inventory, and then through the rest of the next 3 steps, you actually go and make amends.
Okay.
But yes, so the actual process of making amends is a part of being gracious. It doesn't say specifically you should adopt an attitude of graciousness, but in the program, people very much are in tune with the idea that developing an attitude of gratitude, being gracious and thankful for things that you have, actually transforms your not only mindset, but also then the way in which you interact in your world.
So this is where I should say that I'm really grateful for that explanation.
No, because I know that you would prefer that I tell you the time rather than build clocks. But I do think that I have felt, even within the last year, through things that have been going on in my family and in my own personal life, that this idea of trying to be more gracious and having a more gracious outlook has been really, really helpful.
Well, there's some interesting research coming out in the psychological field about mindfulness and gratitude, that, especially when looking at issues of anxiety and depression. But more globally, they're saying that the results seem to be indicating people who have a grateful perspective for the things that they have in their life, that have made an effort to, or make efforts to contact people and say, you are important in my life for these reasons. I am grateful that you are my friend, or that you are in my life, or that you were my teacher or my minister, or what have you. It doesn't matter. I mean, just the idea of being able to say, I acknowledge the gain that I have received from experiencing you or having you in my life, makes those people be better able to fend off depression and anxiety.
Right.
And so that reading some of that research made us decide this is an opportune moment in the calendar year to talk about the fact that gratitude is a good mental skill to develop, and maybe to talk about some ways that people who aren't there yet in their perspective can acquire it or can work to acquire it.
Because most people, we're going into Thanksgiving, and so a lot of people think of Thanksgiving as, Pilgrims landed in, on Plymouth Rock, and right, and they had a celebration to, denote the fact that they had made it through the first year and everything. And that's a great story. But that's not what we're talking about. When we're talking about being grateful, we're not talking about, oh, let's, carve a turkey and, talk, and everybody at the table has to say, oh, this is one thing I'm grateful for.
It's the act of just pausing and thinking about the things in your life that you are grateful for, or that you have been grateful to have in your life.
But then acknowledging it, making it manifest in some real way. So you've actually told a couple of stories recently. You told a story on the podcast recently about a librarian that was really important to you in your life.
Yeah,
you
Mrs.
sought her out,
Carpenter.
and you told her that. And then before we went on Mike today, you were talking about your son, and you had encouraged him to go out and acknowledge somebody that he thought had helped him recently in a situation that he was working in, and that you had told him to do that because you saw that as a way of helping him to really gain more esteem himself.
Well, and quite some
and it worked.
Internal anxieties. He was communicating to me that he was having some anxiety about his social skills. And, if I give him feedback and say, oh, you're really good at that, he dismisses that. I'm his dad, and I'm a biased source. So I said, reach out to this person and let them know that you see that skill in them, or that you appreciate that behavior in them, and see what they do with it. See if it makes them smile, see if it makes them feel good, see if they give you any feedback in return. But the practicing of, objectively practicing, cognitively practicing gratitude and the expression of it is self-healing.
Right.
And it also then helps other relationships. I mean, it's a win-win.
So it's important to have an idea of what you're grateful for yourself internally. You have to say, okay, I'm grateful for X, but then it also is beneficial. That's good. But then it is even more beneficial to then make that manifest through some kind of tangible action.
I told a story about Mrs. Carpenter in part because it was so meaningful to me to have the opportunity to tell her how much I appreciated her. But also because I became a teacher in large measure as a response to her contribution in my life. Then I taught high school for 20 years, and that was 30-something years ago when I stopped. I still occasionally get letters or contacts of one kind or another from former students that say, I just wanted to reach out and let you know that you had an impact in my life. I mean, those ripples continue, and they always are. I mean, I'm so grateful that I was able to have a positive impact on somebody. That makes me feel validated and good. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you're giving it or getting it, it's just a good reality to have. I still have clients that I no longer see because I'm retired, that occasionally I'll run into somebody. I was at a party the other day and somebody said, oh, you know so-and-so. And I know, but I don't ever say how I knew so-and-so.
Right.
And they said, you know so-and-so. I said, yeah, I do. And they said, well, he said you were his therapist and that you saved his life. You were really good. I said, that's an interesting thing to hear. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm surprised that they said that, but that's very nice.
I'm always surprised.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's always amazing to me how many people are willing to put that out. We always talk about the stigma, and not to go off on a tangent, but we always talk about the stigma that's associated with mental health and seeking support. And I think that there's going to be a stigma as long as people say, oh, I think there's a stigma. But I don't know that I buy into that as much today.
No.
Now, are there places in the world where there still may be a stigma? I'm not arguing that. But in our society, I think it's pretty okay. If you want to go out and get some mental health help, I think most people would be okay with that.
Well, it is becoming more acceptable, and it's where I think I see it the most is among men who are more ready to acknowledge that they get help.
Yep.
I mean, women have sort of always been more receptive to saying, yeah, I go see somebody. I know one of our ethical requirements, one of our legal standards is like if we're out in public and we see one of our clients, we're not supposed to approach them and acknowledge them, especially if we have family members with us or somebody else. And people were constantly walking up to my wife and I in the grocery store or shopping center or what have you, and saying hello to me, and then turning to her and say, "You don't know me, but he's my shrink," and blah blah blah. and she, I was raised that you never have somebody join your circle that you don't introduce them to people. And then I remember taking classes in high school, how
Right.
to properly introduce everybody. But my wife had to get used to me not doing that. Somebody
Right.
that she didn't know would walk up and I'd have a conversation with them, and I would never acknowledge she was standing there.
Right.
And she never got her feelings hurt because she understood. And she assumed that it's probably a client.
Right.
She didn't know.
I was going to say, your immediate others learn how to navigate
handle
those
that.
shoals. Right.
But, and I would tell my clients, I don't go home and talk about this. She didn't know who you are. They would call the house because I always had my number available. It was never blocked. And they'd chat with her, and they'd want to tell her things. And she if I wasn't available, and she'd be like, "I'm not a therapist.
not
I don't know
licensed."
anything about your,
That's right.
don't talk to me." And she's like, "I just got to tell you this, and you can tell him." So I am grateful that people were that receptive to any contribution that I might make or try to make, and that is a reflection of what we're talking about. The fact that you feel gratitude. You can't feel gratitude and dismay at the same time.
Right.
You can't feel happy and sad at the same time. We've done podcasts about that. And it's an example to share with others to say, this could work in your life. These are things that you could genuinely, honestly do. But don't fake it. Don't be a hypocrite. Don't be cosmetic. It has to be real.
But you bring up an interesting point that there's a certain reciprocity in this process. If somebody comes to you and says, "Wow, thank you for being a great therapist. It meant a lot to me," it makes you feel good.
Yeah, I say thank you for paying your bill.
Right. Well, among other things. But it is a very reciprocal process.
Yeah.
And so, when we think about, we've always heard this term, pay it forward, that's a really, really profound, mindful concept, paying it forward. And gratitude is, in my opinion, the ultimate form of paying it forward. When you say something to someone else that is of a gratitude nature, that person is going to feel good and is going to be more likely then to have it in their mind to be grateful to another person, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, which brings me to the research that we've been reading and some of the suggestions that they make for people that are listening that are cynical or sardonic, which I have a tendency to be at times. One of the skill sets that they try to teach in the beginning of teaching this sort of thought process is to sit down once a week and write a letter, whether you send it or not. We used to use this exercise in therapy all the time. Write a letter to the person that you are angry with and tell them whatever's on your mind. And then tear it up. Don't send it, but just express it, get it out of you so it's not locked in. This is the flip side of that opportunity. This is to sit down and write a letter to someone or something for which or about which you are grateful. And just once a week, sit down and take 10 minutes to express your gratitude. And whether you send it on into the ethos or not is irrelevant. The gain comes from the consciously thinking about the benefits and blessings in your life. And it's not per se about religion. It's about gratitude. It's about saying, I have received these benefits. I've experienced these benefits. And I'm not claiming worthiness. I'm just grateful that they fell in my lap because I have this that made me better.
And the brain science is always something that
Yeah.
I'm super, super, super interested in. So the way that this appears to work is that when you engage in a process of gratitude, that it lights up on an fMRI, which is a functional magnetic resonance imaging scan.
I actually knew that.
Yeah, that it lights up areas of the brain called the medial prefrontal cortex, which is an area of decision making, but also of primary reward reinforcement.
Is that just at the back of the medulla oblongata, or is that more?
No, it's actually, so it's in the front of the brain, and the medulla oblongata is at the base of the brain.
So it's on top
down
of it.
close to your neck. Yeah. So what is amazing, though, about this research that's being done on gratitude is not that we can identify the brain areas that are being stimulated, because we're getting very good at being able to do that, but that gratitude has a longer lasting, profound impact than any other form of psychotherapy that we have studied. So if you go to a therapist because you're depressed and that person does what's called cognitive behavioral therapy on you, then 6 or 8 weeks out, you're still going to report a good outcome and less levels of depression.
I'm glad you clarified that, because you were talking about taking an fMRI.
Right.
And then you said it lasts longer.
Right.
The results are more visible.
Right. Yeah.
But what you're talking about is self-reporting.
Self-report.
Okay.
Correct.
Right.
And so then 6 months later, that person who received cognitive behavior therapy for depression is more likely to regress back to having feelings of depression. But with gratitude, the effects of that improvement are longer lasting and are reported through self-report for a much longer period of time, making it appear to be a much more durable therapy. So I'm not saying don't go get psychotherapy. You should absolutely go get psychotherapy. But I am saying,
if for nothing else, to learn how to be grateful.
Absolutely. Right. But that this, for me, I have used this as an adjunct in my therapy for a long time. I know you have as well. And we do it probably without even knowing it. We talk about, oh, well, what are you grateful for? Or, what do you, just kind of as, because it seems intuitively obvious.
Well, and I would ask, who do you remember and what do you remember about them that touched you in positive ways? And I don't mean touch physical, although a hug can do the same thing.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, we did a podcast not long ago about when people die and you go to the funeral, what do you say? How do you behave? And Americans chronically say the wrong thing.
That's right.
Oh, she looks natural. No, she looks dead. But what you do is say, I'm sorry for your loss. I care about you. And if it's acceptable and appropriate, you hug them. And so let your body talk to you.
Right. Physical touch is so affirming.
Yes.
And probably as much so it may be a different process by which it helps to stimulate brain function than this idea of gratitude. But I think physical touch is just as affirming and just as durable as this idea of gratitude. It's so important.
But you always have to watch the nonverbals to see if it's receptive on their part. You can't force that on them.
Well, that's right. And there are some people who are...
I'm just a hugger. Well, don't hug me. I mean, people send nonverbals that say, don't touch me.
Autism is a form of disorder that people actually don't enjoy physical contact. And so then that way that then becomes disruptive and possibly even traumatic. So you don't want to force that on a person who isn't ready to receive it. But even with my autistic clients, while I ask everybody, hey, is it okay to hug you? But if they're receptive to it, I do. And I do hug my autistic clients. And I think, just thinking of one man right now that, he has said to me, I don't really enjoy this, but I do it because after I do it, it makes me feel so much better.
Yeah.
And so he's learned that even though it isn't his natural inclination to think about physical touch, that he has actually gotten a tremendous amount out of it.
And he doesn't intend that as an expression of gratitude.
Right.
But it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because he feels better. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he knows it. What a neat thing.
Yeah. So we're going to put a bunch of articles up with this, and people can obviously refer to those, and hopefully they will. There are a couple of things that we definitely wanted to touch on as far as the brain chemistry and some of the things that are beneficial. What we've talked about is that making this, this expression, so whether it's writing it down or just sitting with it yourself, not only is good for you in the moment, but it actually is very durable. It can be good for the other person in a pass it forward kind of way if you share that. But one of the things that I have come to be associated with or learned about, and I learned about this through a client who came in and said, hey, have you ever tried this? And I didn't know what it was, but in the context of supporting him, I tried to become more aware, and I've actually done some research on it, and that is something called loving kindness meditation.
And that is the way by which you become more aware. Just do some research.
That's right.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was saying. But you said this to me earlier, and I was thinking, I remember when we were learning about nonverbal communications, mm-hmm. One of the experiments that they asked us to do was face off in this group with a stranger. Mm-hmm.
We always used to do that.
And stand within 6 inches inside mm-hmm. the personal space bubble and just look them in the eyes for 60 seconds mm-hmm. and then step away, however uncomfortable that was to do. And then sit down and share with them what you learned about them from that 60-second exposure to their inside space bubble. And I think it's a similar thing, because people always said things like, I learned that you're this, that, or the other, and they were always positive. No, I never saw that happen where somebody said, I learned that you're a dangerous SOB and I don't like you. They reflected openness, acceptance, kindness, caring, and those words are feedback strokes that fall in this area that can be an expression of gratefulness. I'm grateful that somebody knows that about me, but without me having to tell them or give them information I didn't want to give them. And I didn't know that I was giving them that, except that I was standing here in a non-defended way.
And one of the reasons why we would do that in graduate school was to try and train people to understand and to appreciate the power of silence, because our society is so unwilling to exist in a silent space with another human being, and to try and help them to understand what the power of that was, and how it may actually make people feel uncomfortable but can be so profitable. And you're exactly right. The experience of that almost always turns out positive, even though there were some people who were training to be therapists that couldn't do the whole 60 seconds.
Because they were so wounded.
Yeah. I mean, and it can be very, very intimidating, but if you can stand in, and even if you can't do the whole 60 seconds, you're so right. Almost always the experience of that was experienced by the individual as a positive.
So if our listeners are interested and want to look at an example of that, I've been watching the 3rd season of The Crown. And my wife and I have been talking about it as we watch it. There are so many situations where people are feeling intense emotions and are in close proximity to each other, but nobody's saying anything. And they're sending messages back and forth non-verbally. And you can see, these actors are so good at communicating that, you can see those feelings ebb and flow, and they either feel accepted and embraced, or they feel rejected. And especially with authority figures, an uncle, a father, a mother. Same thing happens with friends. So if you become aware of the nonverbals, and you become aware that those feelings are accessible, then you can train yourself, or you can positively encounter that experience with the expectation that you're going to send positive, warm feelings to somebody.
Right. And so with the loving kindness meditation, that's the goal, is to sit quietly and to project outwards.
I like you. I like being with you. Makes me feel good.
So the article that I'm going to post is from Very Well Mind, and basically what it's going to say is that, you sit quietly with yourself and you project outwards these mantras of, may I be happy, may I be safe, may I be healthy, peaceful, and strong. And the 4th one is, may I receive appreciation today. May I give and receive appreciation today. And then, so you start off by projecting that out onto another. So may my wife be happy. May my wife be safe. May my wife be healthy and peaceful and strong. May my wife give and receive appreciation today. And then you continue that with other people, other significant people in your life, ultimately focusing on yourself. And what people will find is that that's a very, very powerful experience that they will have. And it is oftentimes the most difficult part is when they try and focus those feelings on the self.
Yes, but I would also say, before you're able to do that, you have to work on your ability to sit quietly with yourself. Because in today's world, we don't do that. There's always a radio on, or a TV on, or we have our phones in our hands. We're mediated away from ourselves. And so in order to do this successfully, you have to be able to sit quietly, and you have to learn to do that. And you do it in incremental sections. You do it for a minute, do it for 2 minutes, do it for 5 minutes. Then start to direct those kind of thoughts towards someone else, and ultimately towards yourself.
So hopefully this is beneficial for people. We hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. Before we sign off today, you did not know I was going to do this, but I just wanted to say to you, Mr. Brett Newcomb, that I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you do for this podcast. You do this for me without any regard for any kind of personal compensation, and that means a tremendous amount to me, and I appreciate you doing that.
Well, thank you. Makes me feel good.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody has a great Thanksgiving. Don't get too full on that turkey, because after Thanksgiving, we're going to have a really spectacular episode that you are going to want to tune in for, and I don't want to spoil it, but for sure the Friday after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, you are definitely going to want to download and check out Psych with Mike. So if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.